Alexander Isak decides he will never play for Newcastle again, and apparently informed Eddie Howe last season of his desire to leave. Let's have a read of this article, a bunch of others, and see what we think about Isak's behaviour. Do we really want that kind of player at Liverpool? Are we hypocritical enough that we can forgive this and welcome him in just because of his quality and talent? How much truth there is? Who knows what the real truth is? We're going to talk about that as well. Isak remains out of contention for Newcastle heading into a new campaign, won't play against Aston Villa, and Ornstein reports that the Swedish striker is adamant he will never represent the club again. How are Newcastle fans feeling about that? It's a massive betrayal, isn't it? 3-year contract. They're the ones that helped him explode onto the world scene. And he's throwing all his toys out the pram. There is no loyalty at all, but should there be? That's always a debate. Ornstein writes that Isak has no desire to reintegrate into the squad. He doesn't even want to try. Eddie Howe's hoping to coax him back around. But if one person is adamant they want to leave, what can you do? For the player himself, the matter is set, and it is maintained that Isak informed Howe of his intention to leave before last season ended. So whilst it's kind of exploded in the last month for the outside world, at Newcastle, they all knew that he wanted to go. Had Liverpool already tapped him up? But Newcastle just got Champions League. They may become a big club in the next year or two. They're on the upward trajectory, or they were before this absolute nightmare of a transfer window for them. So here's a little bit of context. Isak told Newcastle and Eddie Howe he wanted to leave after the director of football, Paul Mitchell, told Isak and his representatives that they would not offer him an improved contract. So it's all about the money, actually. He wants more money. He decided that if you're not going to offer me a new contract, I'm going to screw you over. I'm going to just down tools. I'm going to force you to sell me to another club, a club that will pay me the wages I want to be paid. He feels he's been given a promise, perhaps. It's been suggested since that a feeling of promises not being kept has motivated Isak to force a transfer. Promises are not real unless they're in your contract, unless it's written down and signed. I don't think you get gentleman's agreement anywhere at that level of business when that level of money is involved. That means nothing. And if he felt he had a promise, his agents failed him by not getting that all in writing, not getting that into a legal document, i.e. the new contract. Newcastle value him at 150 million, but with him being so disruptive, unfortunately their hand may be forced and they may have to go down to 130, 120 million. Liverpool have already put in a 110 million. They're not going to go up to 150 million, another 40 million more, when the whole world can see it's so public. The dirty laundry is hanging in public that Isak is refusing to play for you ever again, is downing tools, has torn himself away from the rest of the squad. You're losing a lot of your bargaining power there. Because what do? Do you keep him and hope he gets back to wanting to play for Newcastle? That is a risky move. You can't go into another Premier League season and hope to do as well without that. Especially you can't go into the Champions League and hope to get out of your group without at least 2 solid central attacking players that you can rely on. At the moment, they only have one, Isak. And they don't really have him because he's refusing to play. Sell him now, get that 150 million in, and quickly bring in 2 or 3 or 4. 150 million is a lot. 130 million, let's say Liverpool agree with. Bring that in. You can still get 4 attacking players for that. That will give you good strength and depth. Please do that, Newcastle. Don't waste your time. You know, I think back to when Liverpool sold Coutinho. We were all absolutely gutted as Liverpool fans. That sale allowed us to bring in Van Dijk and Alisson, who formed the cornerstone of our defence for the next 10 years. These players were crucial to any success we've had over that period of time. You may find, Newcastle and Newcastle fans, that if you accept this for 130 million, you can use that money to bring in 2 or 3 players that will really help you kick on. Alan Shearer, in his column on the BBC, so far Newcastle's preseason has been a nightmare. That's exactly what I said. There is no other way of describing it. They've had a disastrous transfer window, missing out on every one of the top targets they went for. Šeško even picked Man United over Newcastle, a team that's in the Champions League. And he went for Man United, who were in the bottom half of the league last season. How? What is going wrong at Newcastle that they can't convince players to join them? And the ones they have are desperate to leave. If Isak is still at Newcastle when the window closes at the start of September, things get interesting because he'll want to play. I mean, he may have a huge amount of egg on his face because it's a World Cup year and you need to play to build form, keep your fitness going, convince your national team manager to put you in a starting team. If you're not playing, you can't be relied upon for the World Cup. If Newcastle resists somehow to sell Isak, how on earth does he get reintegrated into the team? Because at some point he'll have to. He will be incredibly embarrassed and humiliated. And the question there is, how stubborn is the guy? How big is his ego? Newcastle fans, will you forgive him? If he starts banging in the goals, you probably will. The teammates, will they forgive him? Well, if he helps them win games, they probably will. What kind of personality does Isak have? Because I was surprised. He seemed like a lovely guy. I was surprised by how hardline his stance has been with Newcastle. And if this is really just because they promised him, or he felt they promised him an extra bit of money, and that hasn't worked out for some reason, all of this is about money? I don't know how or why it's been allowed to happen, but right now it feels like much of the momentum has been lost. Yeah, Newcastle were on a massive upward trajectory. Everything was looking rosy. They won the cup. They got into the Champions League. Isak's banging in goals for fun. The team's gelling well. You would have expected a whole load of new talented players to join this summer and Newcastle to really kick on next season. Instead, it looks like they're falling apart, absolutely falling apart. And it doesn't make any sense. Why Wissa and Watkins would be a good fit? They would. They'd be a great fit. Sell Isak for 130 million. You'd be able to afford those 2 and more. And more. And then you've got a good attack again. Why waste time, Newcastle, fighting with a player who is willing to tell the world they don't want anything to do with you? If a player is that adamant they don't want to be at the club, let them go because they become poison. And so I want to talk a bit about us as Liverpool fans. Do we want a player like that joining us? We've got a good team spirit. Do we want a player that will happily disrupt their club's entire transfer season, abandon all their teammates, publicly air that they will never play for Newcastle again? Do we want a player like that joining Liverpool? Because what if in one season he decides he wants a new contract at Liverpool when he's got 3 years left on his contract? And we say, not yet, mate. And he says, well, I'm never playing for you ever again. We don't want that. We don't want that. I think Liverpool should actually seriously consider stepping away and get Wissa for ourselves. And meanwhile, the Standard is saying Isak is told to keep pushing for Liverpool move. There is no loyalty in football. We're just meat to clubs, Mikel Antonio says. After being released to West Ham, he's quite bitter about that clearly. But he also thinks the players should put themselves first. Listen, I'm a football fan and I'm a romantic about football. So whilst I can accept maybe that is the reality, that players should be purely self-driven, greedy, want the most amount of money they can get from the club during their careers, I still look at it and go, you're paid an incredible sum of money every week to do things that you and I would only dream about doing and would love to do for free, really. And they're doing it for monumental amounts of money. And yet, according to Antonio, And according to Isak, from his behavior, it needs to be more. More money, more money, more money, more money. Otherwise, I'm happy to tear everything down. It's not the kind of behavior I like personally. He says, as a player, loyalty in the game has really gone. When did it go though? Was it there during my childhood? It seemed like it was there. When did it go? Because the clubs don't treat players like they used to either. Fair dues, I'm not inside that world. I don't know how clubs treat players. Maybe there's no loyalty from clubs to players either. And it's sad. I'm definitely not saying players are the only one to blame. Maybe clubs have got too greedy as well. We are meat to them. As soon as we start going stale, it's time to sell or throw away. That's fair. I mean, I can't really argue about that. It's all about money and how much money can they make for the club. If a club is going to think about the money side of things, why shouldn't a player? Man, that's depressing. It's because I can't really argue about that. I think clubs do think like that. And it's such a shame, isn't it? Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know your opinions. I'll speak to you again very soon. Bye-bye.